I really love my reMarkable 2. It's my go-to device when it's time to focus and think, but it's by no means perfect. So let's talk about the 5 things I'd love to see tweaked on the reMarkable 2. Majority of the things in this list are going to be software in nature because I think largely the hardware on the reMarkable is pretty good. Of course, it'd be nice to see a 300 pixel per inch color reMarkable with a front light in the future, but I'm going to assume that the team at reMarkable's already working on a reMarkable 3, and they've got a pretty good idea of what that looks like. So I'll try to stay focused on the software and the user experience. Let's start first with landscape mode. I find it really silly that I can set my notebook to landscape, but I can't set my entire reMarkable to landscape, specifically the home screen. I'm convinced that landscape mode is the best way to use your reMarkable, but it still feels half-baked. To add insult to injury, the software support for this actually exists, as when you open up the type folio, the reMarkable actually switches into landscape mode. But the second you close the type folio, it goes back to portrait. Luckily for me, I largely stay in one notebook, but this just seems like a silly omission that is easily solved. Next up is indexed document search. It would be really handy if reMarkable supported full notebook search, or maybe even entire tablet search for that matter. I understand that the reMarkable uses handwriting conversion in the cloud and that this would be more challenging than it otherwise seems on the surface, but I think this is completely doable. One, you could have some basic version of handwriting conversion for indexing directly on the device. Or 2, you could have it indexed after it's uploaded to the reMarkable cloud. If you're gonna do it this way, then you probably would want some form of opt-in or preference on whether you'd want your notes indexed. But my guess is that most people would be okay with this, and it would probably make your Connect membership even more worth it, especially if that index search was available on both the tablet and the apps. I could see a scenario where I'd create a lot of content on the tablet and then use the apps to find the things that I need when I need them. Another thing I would love to see is customized workspaces. Whenever I use the reMarkable, I use 2 tools exclusively, the ballpoint pen and the highlighter, and that's about it. But when I want to switch between the pen and the highlighter, it's way too many steps. First, I have to turn on the toolbar because I can't leave the toolbar open or else I'll trigger the document to close because I'm left-handed, and that's where my wrist naturally lays. I then have to tap on the current tool, then choose the tool that I actually want, then highlight what I wanted to highlight, and then do the reverse of all those steps to get back to my typical drawing loop. There are a handful of solutions for this one too. One, I almost never use the type tool without the type folio, or change my text thickness, or use the lasso or the eraser. I would gladly stuff those under an overflow menu if I could customize my toolbar to include the 2 configured tools the way I actually use them. Another option or even supplement to this would be to let me swap between my last 2 tools the way that I could when I used DDVK hacks. For those who've never used DDVK hacks, it would swap out that little circle menu in the top corner of the reMarkable with an icon indicating which tool you're actively using. And then you could swipe in that corner to swap between that tool and the last tool that you'd used. You'd make the change that you wanted to make and then do that same swipe gesture to get back to your tool. And it was a really fast, seamless swap. I know I said I wasn't going to talk about hardware in this video, but you could also solve this with a Kindle Scribe style pen that has both an eraser and a button. This enables the possibility of having a highlighter, an eraser, and another tool to all be available simultaneously without ever having to open the tool UI. I personally prefer to use a button for an eraser, so a pen with 2 buttons and no eraser would be even better for me, but I think a button and an eraser would probably be the most universally liked solution. I guess let me say I'm sure that reMarkable would never do this, but it would also be nice if you could configure what that button would do. For me, I'd personally want it to be a tool swap, or perhaps hold to use another tool, and then when you release, it goes back. But I'm sure others might find something different that they'd want, and configurability here would be really nice. Another thing I'd love to see improved is anti-aliasing. I've always found the anti-aliasing on the reMarkable to leave a bit to be desired. When I first tried the reMarkable out while coming from the Books Note Air 2 Plus, I loved having the fast and raw pen input of the reMarkable. But when looking at the text afterwards, it always looked a bit rough. The Books now has this clever little trick where they perform the anti-aliasing on the strokes when the page is reloaded. I would love to see reMarkable implement this, as this would have the best of both worlds, where your writing stays constant and doesn't flash, but looks great when you review your notebooks or even export from the apps. While I'm on the topic of export, the export could also be greatly improved. If you open a document on the reMarkable app and then zoom in, you'll see that the reMarkable app is rendering the original stroke data, and really nicely, I might add. But when you then export a PNG, you get a much lower resolution image, and you don't have any options to output it at a higher resolution. Oftentimes, if I need a higher quality version, I'll just take a zoomed in screenshot on my Retina MacBook, and it'll actually come out cleaner. The other logical workaround would be to use the SVG or PDF files, which are vector, but unfortunately they're not actually based on the stroke data that the reMarkable app is using. Instead, it looks like they're doing some version of a live trace on a low resolution bitmap image. I'll try to show the two side by side in case you've never seen it before. Another topic that I hear commonly asked for is the ability to turn off pinch to zoom and scrolling paper. Let me start by saying that I personally love scrolling paper, and I think everyone should give it a shot, but people should ultimately have the ability to turn it off if they don't want it. For example, I know plenty of people who accidentally trigger the pinch to zoom and then fumble to figure out how to get back to the native zoom level. I personally don't run into this, but if I did, I would find it incredibly frustrating. With that said, reMarkable could solve this pretty easily by giving users preference. However, if they do this, I would recommend that they separate out pinch to zoom from vertical scrolling. I would gladly turn off pinch to zoom as I never use it, but I would never want to give up my scrolling paper. One more thing that I would love to see is a larger reMarkable. It would be really nice to have a 13.3-inch reMarkable. I've been using the Books Tab X for a while, and that form factor is really, really good. The biggest issue I have with the Tab X is that I find the Books writing app distracting, and I feel much more productive on the reMarkable. There's no way that reMarkable should stop making the 10.3-inch form factor, but it would be really nice if a reMarkable 3 was available in two sizes. I'm sure it would be a pain from a manufacturing standpoint, but I would gladly pay a premium for a larger reMarkable. So there's my reMarkable wish list. I'm certain that I missed a few along the way, so let me know what you'd like to see tweaked down in the comments. While you're down there, you can help me out a ton by liking and sharing this video. And if you're new around here, I have a playlist of all of my e-ink content that I'll link right over here on the side. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, have a great day.